Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Glasgow Times News Podcast, normally recorded in our studio at the Bishopbriggs Media Centre, currently recorded from our volunteers' homes. To keep in touch with us, use our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, which are all at Q and Review. That's CUEANDREVIEW. Or get in touch via information@qandreview.com. That's information at CUEANDREVIEW.com. Please like and share our podcast and give us any constructive feedback.
From the Glasgow Times, Thursday the 7th of July 2022, from the news section, cruel couple who neglected dogs allowed to keep their pets as SSPCA hit out, by Lauren Brownlee. A cruel couple who neglected their dogs were allowed to keep their pets, prompting outrage from animal welfare chiefs who called for tougher sentences. Brian Smith, 39, of Chapel Hall, Airdrie, pled guilty to failing to provide a nutritionally adequate diet for his golden Labrador, Luna. Patricia O'Donnell, 34, of Cairnhill, Airdrie, pled not guilty to failing to provide veterinary treatment to her elderly dog, Millie, who was rescued from Romania and was so thin her ribs showed. O'Donnell received a £250 fine, while Smith received a 12-month supervision order and 75 hours of unpaid work. Scottish SPCA Chief Inspector John Chisholm said, "We attended the property in April 2021 following complaints to our animal helpline of dog neglect. The reports described a Labrador cross-type dog at the property, who was extremely underweight and would often cower away. The dog was described by one caller as skin and bone with its back end protruding." O'Donnell explained that her Labrador cross, Luna, was a Romanian rescue and they were working hard to get her to a healthy weight. Upon seeing Luna, we were immediately concerned as she was severely emaciated, with her hips, spine and ribs prominently protruding. O'Donnell claimed that Luna had been seen by a vet and then been given dietary advice. However, she could not recall any information regarding this. She also changed her story around multiple times. Concern grew for Luna's welfare and O'Donnell was cautioned. She admitted to owning one other dog, Millie. Millie was scruffy in appearance and had areas of matted and tangled fur to her underside and around her ears. O'Donnell became increasingly agitated and angry that her animals were being taken for veterinary care. Upon veterinary examination, it was found that Luna would have been caused an unnecessary amount of suffering due to her poor body condition and appropriate medical attention not being sought. Millie's body condition was found to be less than ideal, and she was found to be suffering from a bilateral ear disease and dental issues. Concern grew for Millie's ears, and she was given a general anaesthetic in order to examine them fully. Once a large volume of thick black wax was removed, the procedure revealed Millie's ears were full of tumours. Veterinary professionals advised her prognosis for recovery was poor, but she could be made more comfortable with medication for the time being. She had not been treated for this previously and was undoubtedly caused suffering. Luna gained 2 kilograms in weight in her first 7 days at one of her animal rescue and rehoming centres. It is extremely disappointing that, considering the amount of suffering that was caused to Millie and Luna, a harsher sentencing was not given. O'Donnell and Smith have clearly shown that they are not able to provide their animals with the care they needed, and we would have hoped this to be reflected in a ban on owning or keeping animals. And that piece was by Lauren Brownlee. From the Glasgow Times, Thursday the 7th of July 2022, from the news section, Battlefield streets to get redesigned to prioritise people over vehicles, by Drew Sandilands, local democracy reporter. Streets in Battlefield are set to be redesigned to prioritise people over vehicles, with public consultation on the changes now underway. Plans include replacing the road next to the Old Victoria Hospital with public space improvements, new cycle lanes and bus stops, and changes to traffic signals to slow down traffic. The consultation also reveals proposals for new bus stops, with the real-time information, a continuous footway across Battlefield Gardens to prioritise pedestrians, and a fire gate at the end of Prospect Hill Road to simplify the junction and reduce traffic in the area, which will allow access for emergency vehicles. The council has said the project aims to make it easier for people of all ages and abilities to walk, wheel and cycle in the area. It also seeks to improve the quality of public spaces along the route. There could also be changes to the priority of traffic signals at the Battlefield Road / Sinclair Drive junction to slow down vehicles and pedestrian islands across Battlefield Road and Sinclair Drive to improve the crossing experience for pedestrians. On Battlefield Road, there could be a token crossing outside Glasgow Clyde College, new electric vehicle spaces, segregated cycle lanes, seating and cycle parking. A simplified junction at Mount Florida Corner is also proposed, as well as loading bays for shops. The consultation comes as Glasgow City Council, in partnership with walking and cycling charity Sustrans, relaunches a previous project, delayed by COVID, as Connecting Battlefield. It is said the process will build on work previously collaborated on with residents and businesses using the Langside area. The aims of the scheme are to improve public space, make the area feel safer, provide more crossing points, prioritise people over vehicles, reduce traffic speed and volume, and improve access to public transport. The council said the redesign started due to local concerns over how the redevelopment of the Old Victoria Hospital site would impact the neighbourhood. The consultation, which ends on August the 14th, reveals work on the scheme is expected to begin in 2024. Council staff will develop the detailed design once feedback has been received. Initial consultation took place in 2017 before concept design work was carried out in 2018 and 2019. The council said the COVID pandemic delayed progress in the project, while staff were focused on spaces for people and creating more space for physical distancing. Funding for the project has been approved by Transport Scotland's Places for Everyone programme, administered by Sustrans. More information on Connecting Battlefield can be found online. Alternatively, residents can visit Langside Library to view the plans. And that article was by Drew Standylands. From the Glasgow Times, Thursday the 7th of July 2022, from the news section: man aged 22 raced to hospital after reported stabbing in North Glasgow, by Sarah Campbell. A man was rushed to hospital following a reported stabbing in the north of Glasgow this week. Police were called to an address on North Woodside Road just before 6 p.m. on Tuesday following a report of an assault. A 22-year-old was later taken from the scene to the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital, where he received urgent treatment for his injuries. No further investigation on the man's condition has been given at this time, and officers continue to investigate the circumstances surrounding the incident. A Police Scotland spokesperson said officers were called to North Woodside Road, Glasgow, around 5:55 p.m. on Tuesday, July the 5th, to a report of a man being stabbed. A 22-year-old was taken to the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital for treatment to his injuries, and inquiries are continuing. And that article was by Sarah Campbell. From the Glasgow Times, Thursday the 7th of July 2022, from the news section: vandals attack life-saving charities minibus as community rally round to help, by Lauren Brownlee. A life-saving Glasgow charity had its minibus attacked by vandals this week. Men Matter Scotland helps hundreds of people across the city who suffer from mental health problems or who have lost someone to suicide. The Drumchapel-based peer-to-peer support group announced that sad news on their Facebook page on Tuesday. However, kind-hearted supporters of the charity and members of the community have rallied round to help. A Just Giving page was set up to help pay for repairs. So far, more than £905 has been raised. Meanwhile, Caledonian Mobile Tyre Fitting, based in Paisley, volunteered to replace tyres that had been slashed. Men Matter Scotland revealed the van is now back on the road. A post on Facebook read, Following on from last night's post about our MMS minibus, we have seen an absolutely unbelievable response from people. A Just Giving page has been set up by some of our concerned supporters. We have received amazing donations, deposits into our bank account, and umpteen well wishes and positive comments of support. Thanks to Caledonian Mobile Tyre Fitting, new tyres were fitted today, so the bus is back in the road. All of your help will allow us to pay our bill too. Hate doesn't win, standing stronger together. Anyone with information about the vandalism is asked to contact Police Scotland on 101. You can donate to the Just Giving page online. To read more about the work Main Matter Scotland does, again, check online. And that was an article by Lauren Brownlee. From the Glasgow Times, Thursday the 7th of July 2022, from the news section, sneak peek as work begins to transform SWG3 for the Glasgow Craft Beer Festival, by Sarah Campbell. The Galvanisers Yard at SWG3 was a hive of activity this afternoon as final preparations for this weekend's Glasgow Craft Beer Festival got underway. Beer taps were installed, decorative banners hung, and kegs chilled as organisers prepared for the event in the city after years spent as the Edinburgh Craft Beer Festival. Chef Nick Watkins of El Perro Negro was spotted rolling up his sleeves to build a foodie tent which his team will share with Southside favourites Babos and pop-up pizza pros Beerm over the two-day event. Inside the Finniston venue's main hall, a DJ deck took centre stage in preparation for a weekend of music from Optimo, Hughie Morgan and Greg Wilson. Having just arrived in Glasgow, Greg Wells, co-founder of festival organisers We Are Beer, was confident that a glimpse of sunshine was a clear sign of good things to come. He said, "We're so glad to be in Glasgow. There's so much planning for these events and it's finally showtime. As soon as you get the keys to the venue and start building the festival, it's super exciting. Come on down whatever your flavour is. We'll find for sure a beer that you'll love. We can't wait to open the doors tomorrow." The Glasgow Craft Beer Festival will run from July the 8th to 9th, with over 35 world-class breweries confirmed to attend. For more information or to book tickets, go to Glasgow Craft Beer. For more information or to book tickets now, check online. And that piece was by Sarah Campbell.
This article is from the Glasgow Times, date 8th July 2022, from the opinion section. I'd rather be woke than an ignorant twat, by Adam Miller. In the summer of 2011, Neil Oliver made a film about the myths and legends of Glastonbury, and the BBC broadcast it shortly before festival headliners U2 performed. The television presenter recounted the moment on his Love Letters to the British Isles podcast in February 2021, the episode description for which declared, "With a glint in his eye, he proudly tells us he was once the warm-up act to Bono and U2 on the Pyramid stage." Barely 16 months on, the same Neil Oliver told GB News viewers that the same festival was the annual pilgrimage of the woke and worthy and the high church of woke. His evidence for this? A few of the 200,000 attendees own electric cars. Well, I say the same Neil Oliver, but the image promoting that podcast featured a clean-shaven man with a smile on his face. Within 3 months, he had joined GB News and quickly settled into his role as a haunted, miserable, reactionary husk with the hairstyles of 90s Charlie Nicholas and the beard of 80s Charlie Manson. A pitiable existence, but an increasingly common one. It's impossible to move for grumpy old men sprinkling wokeness, wokeism and woke mob into every second sentence. Woke has historically meant staying alert to racial prejudice and discrimination. The use of Childish Gambino's song Redbone and its Stay Woke chorus at the start of Jordan Peele's 2017 satirical horror Get Out foreshadowed the protagonist's need to be on his guard against threats based on his skin colour, and was a particularly effective example of woke being used properly. Now, though, the word has been divorced from its original definition and stripped of its meaning, used almost exclusively to mean thing I don't like. The only positive is the time it says. If you see someone using woke as a pejorative, you instantly know you can disregard everything they say about anything. The boy who cried woke, essentially. Woke provokes a visceral reaction in the kind of 57-year-old who would traditionally have been a dominant figure in neighbourhood watch groups and now posts several times a day on the Nextdoor app about suspicious behaviour from local teenagers. The sort of person who spends half their day asking, why is everyone so offended by everything, and the other half complaining about things that have offended them. Below are 8 very serious and important examples of woke, highlighted by the anti-woke mob. M&Ms. In January 2022, the Daily Mail proclaimed M&Ms go woke. The reason? In adverts for the confectionery, the green M&M now wears trainers instead of stilettos. Star Trek. Fox News took aim at the legendary sci-fi series in May 2022 after spin-off Strange New Worlds had the audacity to portray the January 6th US Capitol riots negatively. The Rolling Stones. Piers Morgan condemned Mick Jagger and Keith Richards in October 2021 for removing brown sugar from their setlist. The Megan Observer accused them of pandering to a woke-fuelled narrative by no longer playing a 50-year-old ditty about a young black woman being sexually exploited by slave traders. The Labour Party. A November 2021 column in The Express claimed Labour are currently unelectable due to their implementation of the woke agenda. The Conservative Party. An October 2021 column in The Express claimed the Conservatives have abandoned free expression and now profit from radical wokeness. Fictional busters of ghosts. A December 2021 article on notorious American far-right website Breitbart lamented the 2016 Ghostbusters reboot on account of it supposedly seeking to infuse woke feminism into proceedings, apparently because there are female actors in it. Presumably, this was a betrayal of the all-male real-life Ghostbusters who famously saved New York City from a 112.5-foot marshmallow man in 1984. Lewis Hamilton. Jeremy Clarkson, the answer to a question only your uncle's asking. In recent years, Formula One superstar Lewis Hamilton has become a vocal in his support for progressive causes, prompting Clarkson to moan in November 2021 that Hamilton had decided to go woke and right on. Know your place and go vroom vroom for me, basically. EastEnders. In January 2022, TV critic Ali Ross happily put his name to a column containing these words. For the first 2 decades of this century, Islamist terrorists murdered Londoners at will, while EastEnders, a show which prides itself on reflecting real life, sat on its hands, looked the other way and did nothing. He added inevitably, it didn't fit the woke narrative, you see. Maybe Ross just got confused after seeing EastEnders star Danny Dyer's iconic tweet from September 10th, 2012, which read, "Can't believe it's been nearly 11 years since them slugs smashed into the Twin Towers. It still freaks my nut out to this day." Imagine you were sitting round the table and a family member expressed one of these opinions. You'd be mortified. I've devoted more than 800 words to this so far, but the whole woke issue was recently summed up neatly by national treasure Cathy Burke in just 13 words. I love being woke. It's much nicer than being an ignorant effing twat. That article was by Adam Miller. This article is from the Glasgow Times, date 8th July 2022, from the Lifestyle section. ITV Coronation Street star Kimberly Hart-Simpson reveals she has quit soap, by Kieran Doody. Coronation Street star Kimberly Hart-Simpson has confirmed she is quitting the cobbles and has already filmed her final scenes. The 35-year-old actress portrays Nikki Wheatley in the long-running ITV soap and is leaving the show for a second time as her current storyline draws to a close. The actress confirmed her latest exit when doing a Q&A with fans. One fan asked, "Why are you leaving Corrie?" Kimberly was quick to reveal the reason for her exit, as it was the question many fans wanted to know. She said, "OK, let's get this answered because it's heavy in the inbox. So it's not a case of leaving Corrie, it's more that I came back for a storyline for which has now been completed. If you watched Friday's eps, you'll see there was no big leaving scene, so you never know for the future, but what I do know is this," she added. "I owe so much to Corrie and I absolutely love it there. The people, the vibe, the street. Life happens in chapters, and I'm looking forward to the next part." The actress first appeared in the show in 2020 as a love interest of Daniel Osborne. That article was by Kieran Doody.
Glasgow Times News on Monday the 11th of July. Glasgow roads to close this week as filming starts on Bollywood blockbuster. An article written by Amanda Keenan, reporter. A string of busy Glasgow roads will be closed this week as filming starts on a Bollywood blockbuster. Action thriller Tehran, starring millionaire movie star John Abraham, will be shot at several locations across the city from today until July the 28th. Several streets will be shut and people are being warned to plan their journeys in advance, with only access to emergency services or vehicles given special permission by council chiefs. A spokesman for Glasgow City Council said roads affected and dates and times of restrictions apply to all vehicles, with the exception of emergency service vehicles carrying out an emergency response or vehicles given permission from Glasgow City Council Filming and Events Section. Routes impacted by the arrival of film crews include King Street between Osborne Street and Bridgegate from 3 p.m. on Monday until 11:30 p.m. the following day. Drivers will also be stopped from entering New Wynd between Parney Street and Osborne Street from 10 a.m. until 11:30 p.m. on Tuesday. Restrictions will also be in force on Osborne Street between King Street and Stockwell Street from 7 p.m. until 11:30 p.m. on the same day. The blockbuster, which is described as a geopolitical thriller based on true-life events, is expected to prove a money spinner for the city. It follows the arrival of Hollywood crews last year who transformed parts of Glasgow to film The Batman and the latest in the Indiana Jones franchise. A string of other busy city centre streets will also be closed at varying times as the cameras roll for Tehran. Cadogan Street between West Campbell Street and Douglas Street and Blythswood Street between Waterloo and Home Street will be closed from 6 p.m. until 10:30 p.m. on Friday. Wellington Street, Blythswood Street, West Calder Street and Waterloo Street will be closed from 3 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. on July the 17th, while cars will be unable to access the full length of Brown Street between Crimea Street and Argyle Street from 10 a.m. until 10 p.m. on July the 25th. Wilson Street between Glassford Street, Virginia Street and Virgin Place will also be closed to traffic from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. on July the 26th. And Bell Street between its junction with Albion Street and High Street will also be affected from 10 a.m. until 11:30 p.m. on July the 28th. An article written by Amanda Keenan. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 11th of July. Mum of murdered schoolgirl Paige Doherty hits out at vile internet trolls targeting the family. A front page article written by Amanda Keenan, reporter. Vile internet trolls have bombarded the mum of a murdered schoolgirl with sick messages about her other children. Pamela Munro, whose daughter Paige Doherty was just 15 when she was brutally killed by a Clydebank shop owner, has told how she's been the subject of twisted online abuse, prompting the heartbroken mother to call for a change in the law. Among the depraved messages sent to Pamela, who's 39, was one saying that her other children should kill themselves and another calling from them to be murdered. Pamela, who's welcomed 1-year-old Kalo into her family, is calling for tougher rules to stop trolls being able to torment innocent people from anonymous online social media accounts. Paige was killed by Twisted John Latham in his deli in March 2016. The 4'8" teenager was stabbed repeatedly as she fought bravely for her life. Pamela, who's also mum to Andrew, 16, Peyton, 11, Lucas, 6, Penny, 5, and 2-year-old Malachi said, "The messages my family receive on a regular basis are horrific. I've been told my kids are ugly, that they should be hit by a bus, that they deserve to die like Paige. Any time I post an update on my daughter's charity page, I receive a string of dreadful messages about myself or my children. The comments come from anonymous accounts and can't be identified easily. As a family, we've been through so much since Paige was taken from us. I don't know why any right-thinking person should set out to try and cause hurt to people who've already been through so much. We just want the messages to stop for good. I tell my children to ignore them and rise above them, but of course they're young and what they read has a terrible impact. We're a strong family and this won't break us, but it's incredibly difficult to cope with. I want to see tougher new laws introduced to catch and punish the people who send abuse online. Right now it's far too easy to hide behind a computer screen and to be unaccountable for what you write. It's about time something was done to introduce a proper deterrent. If people knew they were going to face the full weight of the law, they would think twice before hitting the send button." Pamela says she doesn't want to see any other families who've suffered tragedy or loss go through similar heartache at the hands of trolls. She added, "Things have to change. There must be better ways of protecting victims of crime and holding these people to account, and punishing them when their identities are discovered. Social media companies themselves need to look at better ways of policing their platforms." Russell Findlay, MSP, Scottish Conservatives' Shadow Community Safety Minister, is backing Pamela's calls for tougher restrictions. He said, "Having lost their beloved daughter to murder, the family of Paige Doherty have been subjected to vile and relentless online abuse. No family should have to suffer such poison, and I would urge Police Scotland to do whatever it can to identify those responsible and bring them to justice, which could surely deter others. These trolls are inadequate cowards who can easily hide their identities, which is why the UK government online safety bill is so important, as it will force social media companies to stop anonymous users from spreading hate." Monica Lennon, Labour MSP for Central Scotland, said the behaviour of cruel internet trolls can no longer go unchallenged. She said this is a welcome campaign by the Glasgow Times that the rest of Scotland should get behind. As society's use of internet and digital technology increases, unfortunately so too does abusive behaviour online, and this abuse must be stopped. There are too many online trolls causing misery and grief, and I'm beyond appalled that the mother of Paige Doherty has been victimised in this way. Those responsible are pathetic cowards and should be ashamed of themselves. This type of behaviour can have a serious impact on the intended victim's mental health, and it must not go unchallenged. I fully support the Glasgow Times campaign for a crackdown on those who inflict so much distress on others. Pamela, who's from Bishopbriggs, says Paige would have doted on their family's newest arrival, but insists her memory will live on through her charity's continuing work. After burying her daughter and seeing her killer jailed for a minimum of 23 years, she's determined to help others who've been robbed of a child. Pamela added, "Paige would have loved Kalo. She was such a caring girl and would have loved being a big sister and watching her siblings grow up, but we were all robbed of that by Latham. We'll make sure he grows up knowing just how special his big sister was. The family's charity, Page's Promise, offers self-defence classes and bereavement breaks for families. Pamela said, "We'll also be organising more events later this year, and I know this is something Paige would be proud of. We miss her every day. That will never change. We just try and focus on the special time we had with her." A spokesperson from Police Scotland added, "If you become aware of anyone acting illegally or behaving in a threatening way online, report it to police." A front-page article written by Amanda Keenan. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 11th of July. New sketches released of how a redesigned George Square could look. An article written by Stuart Patterson, political correspondent. Sketches of how George Square could look after a redesign have been released, with more green space, new seating and a cafe and events area. Images show a large lawn area on the east side of the square between the cenotaph and the Walter Scott Monument in the centre. The west side of the square shows space for a cafe area and a shared space that could be used for events in the middle of the square. There are more trees around the square and a shared cycle and pedestrian lane on the north and south sides, with traffic reduced to public transport only on the south side, with the east and west sides closed to traffic completely. A final consultation with the public has now started, asking people what they think of the sketches. The ideas are based on responses to a previous exercise where people were asked what they wanted from the city's main civic space. The redesign will include the streets surrounding the square, including Hanover Street and Miller Street, running down to Argyle Street, and North Hanover Street, going north to Cathedral Street. What people say they want will help produce the final plans, with work expected to start in 2024. A second phase will see changes to St Vincent Street, George Street, Dundas Street and Dundas Lane, to be completed in 2028. There'll be a pop-up display of the plans in George Square and an online engagement where people can comment on the plans. The idea is not to radically change George Square, but to make it more attractive for people to spend time there and to make it more accessible for people. Susan Aitken, leader of Glasgow City Council, said, "Glasgow deserves a civic heart that reflects the great, welcoming, vibrant city that it is, and I'm pleased people from all over the city have taken their opportunity to tell us what George Square means to them and what they would like to see it become." This final engagement will not only see their thoughts on our city's most historic and loved public place take shape, but also to give Glaswegians a final chance to influence the final design. The George Square scheme is part of the wider £115 million Avenues project, a network of new, accessible and sustainable routes throughout the city centre. An article written by Stuart Patterson. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 11th of July. North Lanarkshire Council to bring 200 homes into use for Ukrainian refugees. An article written by Craig Payton and Sarah Campbell. A Scottish council has announced plans to bring up to 200 empty homes back into use to house refugees fleeing Ukraine. North Lanarkshire Council said today it would use £5 million of Scottish Government funding to reinstate the homes in high-rise towers in Coatbridge and Wishaw to a high standard. The towers, High Coates in Coatbridge and Berkshaw in Wishaw, were slated for demolition as part of a council strategy, but the council hopes their refurbishment, with the first expected to be complete in 6 weeks, will see some refugees staying in hotels able to live in their own homes. Council leader Jordan Linden said, "The people escaping conflict in Ukraine faced the most unimaginable circumstances. Across Scotland, so many have welcomed Ukrainian people into their homes and communities, and I'm proud that we can play a leading role in the national effort by providing a large number of homes here in North Lanarkshire. I know that the people of North Lanarkshire will welcome those who face such an uncertain time with their usual warmth and generosity, and I'm pleased that we can move quickly to assist. Already, council staff are working with partners to provide support and advice to people from Ukraine in hotel accommodation, and that extensive work will continue when these homes are occupied. As Scotland's largest council landlord, we're well placed to deliver the reinstatement of these homes, and I look forward to welcoming people over the coming weeks. Following the reinstatement of the first homes, the programme will expand in the coming months, according to the Council, with capacity for up to 200 homes. Neil Gray, who serves as the Scottish Government's Minister for Ukrainian Refugees, welcomed the move. "We appreciate this contribution from North Lanarkshire Council. These homes will play a vital role in providing longer-term accommodation and support to displaced people from Ukraine," he said. The Council is to be commended for recognising the importance of assisting national efforts to home thousands of people fleeing the illegal war in Ukraine. The Scottish Government and partners are providing practical support and a welcome to more than 4,500 displaced people through our Super Sponsor scheme. Ensuring we have a supply of safe, secure homes in partnership with councils, housing partners and individual host volunteers is a vital part of this work, and we're grateful to everyone who's supporting this. An article written by Craig Payton and Sarah Campbell. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 11th of July. Petition is launched to ban fireworks in neighbourhood. An exclusive article written by Sarah Paccheroni, multimedia journalist. A petition has been launched to introduce a no firework area in a neighbourhood in Glasgow's south side after firework riots. We previously reported residents of Pollokshields have been campaigning to ban fireworks from their neighbourhood. Late last month, they succeeded in pushing for a bill that will make streets across Scotland safer from pyrotechnics, including the powers for councils to establish firework control zones. However, the Scottish Government explained that the control zones will require further legislation and guidance before they can begin and operate to their full intended effect. Campaigner Danny Phillips has now launched a petition to encourage Glasgow City Council to ban fireworks from Pollokshields as soon as it can. He said, "If there's an area that should become a no fireworks zone, that's Pollokshields." This bill came out of the fact that we had firework riots, as police have described them, about 4 years ago. We've been promised action for years now. We're worried that the council is lagging behind and not taking this seriously. The Fireworks and Pyrotechnic Articles Scotland Bill passed last month and introduces a fireworks licensing system with mandatory safety training for anyone to purchase and use fireworks. It also introduces powers for local authorities to designate firework control zones. Campaigners want a control zone to be introduced in Pollokshields before Guy Fawkes, after terrifying scenes of firework misuse on Bonfire Night in 2018, when gangs set off pyrotechnics in the street, injuring a young child and firing rockets at police. "We've only got a few months to go before we need to get all that set up, and we've heard nothing," added Mr. Phillips. "We also need to know from the police that they're going to go around and that they're going to enforce it. We need to know what to do. What do we do if people do start setting off fireworks in Pollokshields? As a community, we need to show how angry we are about it and how important this is to people in the area. Sign the petition, get in touch with our councillors and just push this and get it over the line." However, enforcement of the law might not start until next year. Glasgow City Council said local authorities currently do not have the powers to enforce firework control zones. A spokesperson said, "The new legislation has not yet been enacted. Once it is, and guidance is available to local authorities, we will study it closely." A Scottish Government spokesperson said, "Work will now begin as a priority to implement the measures within the Fireworks and Pyrotechnic Articles Bill, recently passed by Parliament." The provisions on firework control zones will require further legislation and guidance before they can commence and operate to their full intended effect. Time will therefore be required, following royal assent, to prepare such legislation and for this to be scrutinised by the Scottish Parliament. It's therefore anticipated that the earliest it could commence is next year. Police Scotland said that it is aware of Pollokshields residents' concerns and will ensure appropriate plans are in place before Bonfire Night for deterring and detecting any offences. Inspector Kenny Smith said the new regulations relating to the sale of fireworks have been introduced following continued multi-agency discussion on how to appropriately address antisocial behaviour where fireworks are involved, while at the same time ensuring that communities feel safe. Policing alone cannot tackle fireworks-related disorder, and parents and guardians of young people have a vital role to play by having very frank conversations with those in your care about the risks of getting involved in criminal activity with fireworks. We'll do all that we can to prevent these incidents occurring in the first place, but should they happen, we will respond in whatever means necessary to protect the public. An exclusive article written by Sarah Pacciaroni. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 11th of July. Plea for library to get its hours back to normal. An article written by Sarah Hilly and read by Howell. A library with the joint worst operating hours in Glasgow needs to fix its staffing problems, a councillor has claimed. Springburn Library is only open on Monday, Tuesday and Saturday, and has also experienced a string of sudden closures. Glasgow Life, which runs the facility, said there have been recruitment issues and staff absences. Local Labour councillor Thomas Ranachan said teenagers from the Springburn Youth Forum have warned that exam pupils missed being able to access the internet at the library. Since May the 5th, either the Springburn or the nearby Barmullach Library have been closed on a Saturday 4 times between them. Commenting on how the library provides important internet access, Councillor Ranachan said, "Not every person has Wi-Fi at home and there's a stigma attached to that. I feel like Springburn is being unfairly disadvantaged. The Springburn Youth Forum highlighted the lack of opening times as a challenge for them during exam time. They want to log on and do research." He pointed out other residents need to access benefits online or update details, and the lack of library internet access is a problem. Councillor Ranachan continued, "The library is well located and is a focal point in Springburn. It's well used by people of all ages. Not having it is depriving people of help they need to get their lives back to normal following the pandemic. For some, that's finding a job or accessing a benefit. There's a sense of frustration here." He added, Springburn Library has the joint worst opening times in the city. A spokesperson for Glasgow Life said, "We're working hard to return all of Glasgow's libraries to pre-pandemic opening hours as quickly as possible. We had hoped to achieve this by the end of June, but like many sectors, we're experiencing recruitment challenges. This has been impacted further in recent weeks as a result of staff absence, which has meant we've had to close some libraries temporarily at short notice, and we apologise for any inconvenience this has caused. We're still recruiting, and while it's taking slightly longer than we had anticipated, we expect to be able to return to pre-pandemic hours by the end of this month. We'll share more updates on our social media channels in the coming weeks." An article written by Sarah Hilly. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 11th of July. Peaceful show of solidarity to take place for women in the USA. An article written by Sarah Campbell, digital journalist. A peaceful protest will take place in Glasgow this month following the overturning of the Roe v. Wade case in America. Similar protests have already taken place across the UK as the devastating decision to scrap the constitutional right to abortion in the United States received widespread condemnation. This Saturday, people are invited to gather at George Square to show solidarity with the women in roughly half of all United States states who will be subject to abortion bans. Co-organiser of the event, Leanne McMullen, who's 25, said, "What's happening in America is disgusting. No woman should feel like she doesn't have rights to her own body. We're hoping for a good turnout and will give everyone the chance to say their piece. We already have a few women who want to talk about their experiences and tell us why it's important to protest. Even if you don't want to speak, everyone is welcome to come down and stand with us." Leanne will lead the protest alongside Brona Megahy after the pair met in a group chat dedicated to organising similar events across the UK. The peaceful protest for women's rights will take place on July the 16th at 1 p.m. An article written by Sarah Campbell. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 11th of July. ScotRail's fare deal slammed as less than 1% of tickets eligible. An article written by Stuart Patterson, political correspondent. Fewer than 1% of rail tickets were eligible for a half-price discount scheme to encourage people to use the trains more, according to Labour. Details obtained by the Labour Party under Freedom of Information found that 0.88% of all tickets sold during the period were discounted. The scheme was in place for 3 weeks during May. Transport Scotland said it was a short-term measure and thousands of journeys were made by train that wouldn't have been. There were 13,639 tickets bought under the half-price discount. The information supplied also showed there were 1,550,773 tickets sold in total. Labour said there were too many restrictions on the discount tickets, with peak trains and weekend services not eligible. Tickets bought at railway stations were also not eligible for the discount, the party said. Rhoda Grant, Scottish Labour Chief Whip, said, "This farcical scheme lays bare the gulf between the SNP spin and reality. People desperately needed a lifeline during the cost of living crisis, but this pitiful response is the best the SNP could muster. This was a pathetic attempt to chase a headline on the cheap, not a serious attempt to tackle rip-off fares and support our railways. This is a damning symbol of the SNP's lack of ambition for our publicly owned railways, which have fallen into chaos as a result of the SNP's relentless incompetence." A Transport Scotland spokesperson said, "As we stated at the time, this promotion was an early measure ScotRail was implementing to reduce the cost of rail travel on a promotional short-term basis. As a result, around 8,000 journeys were made that would not have been made otherwise. This is one of many such offers that we can expect to see under a publicly owned and operated ScotRail. We're committed to ensuring that rail fares are affordable for passengers and taxpayers across Scotland, and are progressing our Fair Fares review to ensure a sustainable and integrated approach to public transport fares." An article written by Stuart Patterson. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 11th of July. SNP Deputy Leader backs Ian Blackford. An article written by Tom Torrance. The SNP's Deputy Leader has said he has full confidence in Ian Blackford after how he handled a complaint made against one of his MPs. The party's Westminster leader has drawn criticism in the wake of an independent investigation finding that Patrick Grady had acted inappropriately towards a member of SNP staff while drunk in 2016. Mr Grady was suspended from the House of Commons for 2 days as a result of the probe, with the party whip removed until the suspension had been served. A recording was released from an SNP group meeting where Mr Blackford could be heard urging colleagues to support Mr Grady. Speaking on the BBC Sunday show, Keith Brown, who added his apology to the victim, said he retained confidence in Mr Blackford's leadership. It is the case that Ian Blackford has said he will look to make changes in relation to how these situations are dealt with, he said. It's very important that lessons are learned and that improvements are made. An article written by Tom Torrance. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 11th of July. Teens raised funds for friend to get a new prosthetic leg. An article written by Kirsty Fearick. Teenagers cheered up their pal who had his leg amputated by raising thousands for a cancer charity. Fraser Reid was diagnosed with osteosarcoma, a bone cancer, after suffering stabbing pains and a crushing sensation in his knee. The 18-year-old from Hamilton underwent aggressive chemotherapy, but when his cancer returned, he was forced to face amputation. Now his friends have raised £2,700 by climbing up Tinto Hill for the Beatson Cancer Charity. Ria Brady was one pal who helped organise the climb after being inspired by Fraser's determination. The 19-year-old from Hamilton said, "We started at 10 a.m. and got up to the top around 11 a.m. It was a great day out, knowing we were doing something for an amazing charity who helped our friend. It motivated us all to get to the top. It was great that Fraser met us all at the bottom of the hill. I wanted to do a fundraiser to raise money for the Beatson, just to give back for everything that they've done for Fraser, as that's where he went for treatment. I thought it would be great for Fraser to see that we were up for doing anything we could to give back. When I told him that I was raising money for Beatson and getting all his friends involved, it really cheered him up, knowing we were all behind him as he found out he was fighting cancer for the second time. The Beatson was a great support too. The charity emailed me to give their thanks for choosing them to raise money for and offered all their help to give us tops, flags and banners. We previously reported that Fraser is tortured every day by phantom pains after having his leg amputated. He's adjusting to life after the amputation and is focusing on staying positive while dealing with excruciating pain. Now, following his amputation, his pals have rallied round to help him pay for a prosthetic leg. they've set up a crowdfunder with a £15,000 goal to help Fraser adjust to his new life. Fraser previously told the Glasgow Times, "Life since amputation is not fun. Torture every day with phantom pains. It's torment because nothing seems to help. I still continue to crack jokes and try to smile though." An article written by Kirsty Fearick. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 11th of July. Train strike ballot results to be announced today. An article written by Joshua Searle, SEO journalist. The threat of huge disruption to rail services is set to increase today when the results of strike ballots by drivers are announced. Members of the drivers' union ASLEF at 8 train companies have been voting on whether to launch campaigns of industrial action over pay. The outcome could lead to walkouts over the summer following strikes by the Rail, Maritime and Transport or RMT union last month, which crippled services. Talks between the RMT and rail companies are set to resume this week. The ASLEF ballot results are among drivers at Chiltern, GWR, LNER, London Overground, Northern, South Eastern, TransPennine and West Midlands rail companies. The Transport Salaried Staff Association is also balloting its members at Network Rail and a number of train operators in England for industrial action. Mick Whelan, General Secretary of ASLEF, said, "Strike action is always the last resort for this trade union, but many of our members have not had a pay rise since 2019. We'll fight to maintain the pay, terms and conditions and the pensions of our members. The train companies are doing very well out of Britain's railways, with handsome profits, dividends for shareholders and big salaries for managers, and train drivers are not going to work longer for less. We're not asking for a pay rise, we're asking for our pay not to be cut for a third year in a row. We've accepted real terms pay cuts for 2 or 3 years now, but whilst huge sums of money continue to slosh around our industry, we won't accept another cut for another year. Wage increases aren't the main cause of inflation. Excess profiteering is. Wages are chasing inflation, not causing it. Our members were proud to get fellow key workers and essential goods around the country during the pandemic. We're proud to continue to serve passengers as they come back to our railway, but our hard-working rail workers will not accept real terms pay cuts year after year. We're happy to talk to anyone who can resolve this situation, but the government is restricting what the operators can offer and then refusing to get involved in negotiation. They have no interest in finding a resolution." An article written by Joshua Searle.
From the Glasgow Times of Tuesday the 12th of July 2022, from the opinion section, Katrina Stewart. Were Transmit crowds right to chant "fuck the Tories"? On the other side of the Clyde, a chant was cutting across the river following those of us walking away from Glasgow Green. It penetrated across to the south side of the city and back over the East End, reaching sideways to the Merchant City. It was, to cut a long story short, piercing everywhere. The night was turning dark blue as the daylight faded, but the air was being turned metaphorically blue from the repeated words "fuck the Tories" over and over, over and over. If there was a theme to this weekend's Transmit Festival, it was that, a verbal 2 fingers up to the Conservatives and all they currently stand for. It came from the bands on stage. Wet Leg, an Isle of Wight pop group currently delighting the charts with a quirky double entendre-laden song, whispered it into a microphone. Jamie Webster, fresh from trying the same trick at Glastonbury last month, yelled the phrase at his audience to delighted response. Sam Fender did the same, as did Maximo Park. Artists from across the UK were united in repeating the slogan, and the crowd was just as invested. During the 3-day festival, the chant could be heard across the site at regular intervals, someone starting it off and others needing no encouragement to keep it going. By Sunday afternoon, some entrepreneurial wag had commissioned blue bucket hats with Tory scum printed in white on the front, and these were perched on heads bobbing about the festival site. I've been covering Tea in the Park and then Transmit since 2008, and it's the first time the event has had anything like such a political theme. Politics and music go hand in hand, of course. Music is political. It's impossible to separate the two. Even the mainstream music and chart hits of a festival like Transmit. Writing music, performing it, and how the audience receives it are all arts that exist in the same space as the current political and social trends of the day. Songs, often especially pop songs, are an exploration of feelings and realities that are influenced by the experience of those who write them. And we are all affected by politics. Glastonbury has had its headline political moments. Jeremy Corbyn on the main pyramid stage in 2017, making a speech about unity, obviously springs to mind. It's 5 years since the veteran Channel 4 broadcaster Jon Snow had a brief lapse in memory after being accused of shouting "fuck the Tories" while having his photo taken with a group of admirers at Glastonbury. The now 74-year-old claimed to be unable to remember if it was true or not, generating admiring and chiding headlines depending on the publication writing them. That seems like nothing more than a bit of a tease now, given how comprehensively the political party was being battered this weekend in Glasgow. The city, famously, is not Tory blue, it's a left-leaning place. Transmit is full of young people who are instinctively anti-Tory and align themselves more naturally with socialist principles. It is also, of course, full of musicians who also tend to cleave to the left. So it would be almost beyond the scope of human endeavour to imagine what the Conservatives might have to achieve in order to earn favourable chants sung about them at a festival in Glasgow. While reluctant to quote Boris Johnson, a lot of the relentless singing this weekend will have been the herd mentality he mentioned in his leaving speech last week. Much of it will have been the result of festival goers being nicely well refreshed and not entirely at their best critical thinking selves. For singers, it's cheap and fast audience engagement. A quick "fuck the Tories" is guaranteed to get the people going and elicit an encouraging cheer. It's not quite a statistically significant sample, but I asked a few people on site over the weekend why exactly they thought the Tories should be dealt with in such a manner. The responses fell under a loose umbrella that could be summarised as "because they're bad." It's a tricky thing, looking for nuanced views at a music festival. Young people are switched on and engaged, and I have no doubt a lot of the people singing could give pretty robust reasons to back up their song choice. At the same time, they're at a music festival and don't want to justify themselves to some woman asking them questions when they're merely trying to have fun. The current list of reasons one might give for disliking the present crop of Conservatives is rich, long and varied. Where to start, really? While it's good to see politics enter a mainstream cultural event, the chanting is useful for little else than letting off steam. Not that that's a bad thing, but chanting mindless slogans often doesn't take us very far. What an achievement, though, from the current Westminster government, creating enough unfettered fury with its ongoing shenanigans to turn a roasting hot, light-hearted music festival weekend into an impromptu platform for working out voter frustrations. This article was by Katrina Stewart from the Glasgow Times of Tuesday the 12th of July 2022, from the opinion section, City of Science, Making Sense of Numbers. Numbers are all around us. The date, the time, prices, ID numbers, they're everywhere. To say life would be difficult without numbers would be an understatement. A functional society would simply not exist. So where did numbers come from? Why are they written the way they are? How did we get here with them? To answer these questions, let's go back in time and see how numbers went hand in hand with the birth of humanity and everything thereafter. Historical origins. Humans have always understood the concept of quantities. The earliest numerical systems were based on tally marks, going as far back as prehistoric times, based on marks found in bones and rocks. Ancient societies followed suit for smaller figures, but began to adopt special characters to represent larger numbers, removing the head-aching inefficiency of writing out 100 lines. To name a few examples, the Egyptians used tally mark lines for numbers 1 to 9 and hieroglyphs to represent numbers larger than this, including a kneeling person for 1,000,000. The Minoans, precursors to the ancient Greeks, used a combination of lines, circles and grid-like characters to represent tens, hundreds and thousands respectively. The Romans had their well-known numeral system that you can still see used every now and then to this day. V is used to represent 5, X for 10, C for 100 and M for 1,000. Invention of the modern numerical system. Meanwhile, in India, a whole different numeral system that allowed for the expression of very large numbers was being developed. It enabled any number to be expressed with any combination of 9 glyphs, with use of the number 0 to express larger numbers and decimals to express fractional quantities. Sound familiar? Muslim scholars, including a Persian mathematician called al-Khwarizmi, would later remark upon this system's ease of use in performing calculations. The need for calculations to facilitate trade led to its widespread adoption and modification across the Arab world, hence why we call them Hindu-Arabic numerals. A similar pattern would play out in Europe when an Italian accountant known as Leonardo Bonoacci became enamoured by them while on a trading mission. Nowadays we know him as the mathematician Fibonacci. He evangelized using the Hindu-Arabic numeral system among Pisa's merchants upon publishing a book called Liber Abaci, or the Book of Calculation. This numerical system was convenient in simplifying calculations, especially multiplication and division, and by the 15th century they had largely replaced the Roman numeral system. The age of European exploration and conquest then spread the Hindu-Arabic numeral system across the world to become today's numerical mainstay. As history demonstrates, a number system was the key to ensuring resource allocation through government and trade could exist. Going from tribes dividing the meat from a hunt to the financial systems modern society lives by relied on the ability to express quantities quickly and methodically. It was key to ensuring humans prospered as a species. Beyond counting numbers. Numbers have many uses beyond simply counting, though, since every aspect of our lives can be measured. For example, can you quantify beauty? Yes, and the answer is 1.618. There's your next idea for a date night compliment. Joking aside, as any designer will tell you, positioning matters. Using the golden ratio, where the larger of two design elements is 1.618 times larger than its smaller counterpart, will have you follow in the steps of many different designs, ancient Greek temples, the Mona Lisa, and, for a closer to home example, the arrangement of tiles at Glasgow Science Centre's Fibonacci Garden. One of the possible reasons why it appeals to the human eye is its frequent appearance in nature, including in flower petals and pine cones. Additionally, quantities have been used as the basis for superstitions, which can lead to real-world effects. A study conducted in China, where 8 is considered a lucky number, found that hotel prices that contain this number somewhere will receive higher numbers of bookings and earn the hotel higher ratings on average. Why exactly are some numbers considered lucky and others unlucky? Much of it either comes down to religion or mathematics. 7 is considered lucky as it took God 7 days to create the world in the Bible, and 3, likewise, due to the Holy Trinity. By extension, 21 is considered lucky as it is the product of 7 and 3. If you've ever wondered why someone's 21st birthday feels special, there's your answer. And wouldn't you just know it, Glasgow Science Centre turns 21 this July. This article was by Sean Edmund, Glasgow Science Centre.
From the Glasgow Times, Tuesday the 12th of July 2022, from the news section. Cops crack down on drivers failing to stop at red lights in Clyde Tunnel, by Rebecca Newlands. Traffic cops have cracked down on drivers failing to stop at red lights in the Clyde Tunnel. Officers were approached by Clyde Tunnel Control, who were experiencing an issue of drivers not stopping at red traffic lights while the tunnel is undergoing maintenance. Road police have now sent warnings to 13 drivers that they will be prosecuted. A Police Scotland spokesperson said Glasgow road policing were contacted by Clyde Tunnel Control regarding drivers failing to comply with red traffic signals during tunnel maintenance. 13 drivers now have a notice of intended prosecution being sent to them in the post. This article was by Rebecca Newlands. From the Glasgow Times, Thursday the 12th of July 2022, from the news section. Glasgow airport boss who oversaw 2007 terror attack response steps down, by Sarah Ward. The chief executive of Glasgow Airport, who oversaw the response to the 2007 terror attack, announced he is stepping down from his role and revealed watching stag doos enjoying themselves was the best part of his job. Derek Provan has been chief executive of AGS Airports, which owns Glasgow, Aberdeen and Southampton airports, since April 2018. He will leave his role in March 2023 and said it was the best job he had ever had, insisting that nobody flying from Glasgow had missed a flight because of queues. Passenger numbers in 2022 are expected to be about 70% of those in 2019, at an estimated 6 million this year compared to 8.8 million in 2019, while airport bosses expect numbers to reach pre-pandemic levels in 2025. Mr. Provan said, "I suppose the thing that always brings a smile to my face, you are always bound to see a stag party or a hen party. Men dressed as brides is pretty normal experience at Glasgow Airport." He started out as a firefighter at the airport nearly 25 years ago and led the operational response to the terrorist attack at Glasgow Airport on June 30th, 2007. Terrorist Bilal Abdullah was jailed for a minimum of 32 years for conspiracy to commit murder after driving a jeep into the airport terminal, while co-conspirator Kafil Ahmed died of burns injuries. Mr. Provan was able to oversee the reopening of the airport within 24 hours and praised the unflappable spirit of Glaswegians. He said, "The car used in the attack was still wedged into the front of the building, but people were walking past, taking photographs over the hoarding screening the vehicle." He said a quarter of a decade had flown by, and it would have been an easier decision to stay in his role. Mr. Provan added, "I certainly never came into Glasgow Airport as a firefighter, thinking I would leave it as a chief executive. It is 25 years. It sounds like a long time. I can say with all honesty it feels like a couple of years. I love the airports. I love the industry. It has been phenomenal. I have always said every job I have left has been the best job I have ever had. That remains true today. This is my decision now to leave the business, and I have to say it is probably one of the most difficult decisions I have made, primarily because the easiest decision would be to stay. I love AGS, the business, and I love the people that work within it. That is what makes it so difficult to make the decision. When I leave, it will be almost 25 years since I started. For me, that seemed like a natural milestone to pursue new challenges outside executive management. If I were staying in executive management, I would stay in AGS. Chairman of AGS, Lena Wilson, said, "On behalf of the board, I would like to thank Derek for his leadership and unwavering commitment to AGS. Not only has he navigated AGS through the recent downturn, which brought much of our industry to a standstill, he has fostered extremely positive relationships with local and national government, and perhaps more importantly, with all our employees. Derek is one of the most talented leaders I have had the privilege to work with, and we wish him well in his next exciting chapter. We are grateful that he has agreed to remain in post as we work to appoint a successor." From the Glasgow Times, Tuesday the 12th of April 2022, from the news section. Man sentenced for sexually assaulting woman at Buchanan Street subway in Glasgow. By Rebecca Newlands. A man has been sentenced after he sexually assaulted a woman at a subway station in Glasgow. Alistair Macmillan approached a woman on the stairs of the Buchanan Street station and assaulted her while making indecent sexual comments to her. The incident occurred on the 10th of August 2021. The 38-year-old then handed himself in to British Transport Police after a full investigation, and a media appeal was launched when the woman complained. Macmillan of Priorscroft in Torfichan was sentenced at Glasgow Sheriff Court on Friday, July the 8th for Section 3 Sexual Offences (Scotland 2009) and Section 7 Sexual Offences Scotland 2009 for communicating indecently. He was given a community payback order for a year and ordered to pay £1,000 in compensation. BTP Detective Constable Andrew Shield said, "Sexual offending will absolutely not be tolerated on the rail network. Everyone has the right to travel and feel safe. We will always take reports of sexual offences seriously when they are reported to us." In this case, following our media appeal, Macmillan handed himself in to the police. We were then able to bring him before the courts. If you are ever a victim of a sexual offence or sexual harassment on the railway network, you can text us discreetly on 61016 or call 0800 40 50 40. In an emergency, always call 999. This article was by Rebecca Newlands.
From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 13th of July 2022, from the news section. Comedian Alan Carr gives fans update after collapsing on stage in Glasgow. By Rebecca Newlands. Comedian Alan Carr has given fans an update after he collapsed on stage in Glasgow. The 46-year-old was performing at the King's Theatre on his regional trinket tour on Sunday evening when he fell on stage. Now he has taken to social media to explain what happened to reassure fans that he will be okay. He said in a video post, "I've been performing up in Glasgow and there's a bit in my routine where I pretend to be Jason Statham. I high-kicked and I got the worst cramp ever. Oh my god, it was shooting pains and I was rolling around on the floor and people thought it was part of the act." He explained that he managed to finish the show after his manager slipped him a crutch and has since taken ibuprofen. Carr later posted a picture of himself on stage holding the crutch and told fans he had torn his calf. He said, "It's still sore and I'm still limping, but it could have been a lot worse. Phew." Friends and fans shared their sympathies and well wishes for the chatty man, including Vanessa Feltz, who commented, "Phew, speedy recovery." Comedian Kevin Bridges added, "What a legend." And that piece was by Rebecca Newlands. From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 13th of July 2022, from the news section. Former drug addict turned pastor graduates from university after turning life around. Report by Amanda Keenan. A pastor who escaped a life of gang violence and crime that culminated with him being held at gunpoint had graduated from university at the age of 52. Stuart Patterson went from being offered a scholarship at a top Glasgow school, Hutcheson's Grammar, to dropping out of education at 15 and sliding into a life of drugs, drink and violence. The dad of 3, who now runs a community church in Easterhouse, spoke of his pride after being awarded a BA Joint Honours in Journalism, Creative Writing and Social Policy from Strathclyde University. He admits it was a moment he feared he would never see, and hopes it inspires others trying to turn their life around or facing battles with addiction. He told the Glasgow Times, "I'm proof that anyone can turn themselves around if they are given a proper chance. I never imagined I'd be accepted into university, let alone graduate with distinction. Going back into education after all these years was a daunting prospect. My first day in class felt very strange. I kept having my doubts and thinking, am I smart enough to be here? Or am I too old for this? I had to push myself to keep going and get over my irrational fears. I realised quickly that I love academia and it's been the best decision I've made. It's never too late to do something you're passionate about. I've learned over the years that your past doesn't have to determine your future." As a teenager, summers for Stuart involved fighting on run-down football pitches, smoking cannabis, and drinking cheap tonic wine to fit in. He left school as soon as he could and got a job as a butcher. Soon though, he was taking drugs before eventually finding himself in prison. On his release, he found a new role on a building site, and the love of heroin that resulted in a gang holding a gun to his back and threatening to pull the trigger. The moment his demons almost cost him his life proved to be a wake-up call to Stuart, who, at 27, knew something had to change before he found himself dead. Stuart, who now lives in Paisley, said, "I was always book smart and my parents were delighted when I was given a scholarship to a private school. It soon became clear that the books would cost a lot of money that my family just didn't have. I felt insecure and started to develop a lot of self-doubt, thinking I didn't belong in a posh school. I remember hearing my parents arguing about the cost of books, and I just decided to drop out. I spent my time instead riding the subway or playing with toy cars in a field. I started smoking cannabis, and before too long, I was taking hard drugs. The gangs I would hang around with became like family to me. They knew I was smart and wasting myself, and they would say, 'You've got to pull yourself together and do something with your life.'" He added, "I knew deep down they were right, but they had no clue how to change things. I felt stuck in a spiral of addiction, but I needed help to quit. The only thing I cared about was getting £10 to score drugs. Nothing else mattered to me. When my mum finally persuaded me to talk to a minister, I only agreed to keep her happy. We prayed together and something changed in me. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about drugs. I wanted to get clean and get my life back. I found God and started to think about how I could help others rather than myself." He believes that moment changed his life and now devotes his time to helping others struggling with addiction. He added, "People think Easterhouse has a terrible reputation for poverty and crime. In fact, it's one of the best places around. People go out of their way to help one another, and it's about time work was done to help it move away from the negative way it's viewed. I'm fiercely proud to be from Easterhouse. It is a place with its problems, but it also has an incredible sense of community. In its own way, it made me who I am and what I am today." And that report was by Amanda Keenan. From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 13th of July 2022. From the news section, exclusive. That is a serious knife. Man in the street with blade caused East End large-scale disturbance. By Katrina Stewart, columnist and reporter. A sheriff gave a last chance to a man who caused a large-scale disturbance on an East End street with a serious kitchen knife. Evan Delaney was warned about his behaviour by Sheriff Vincent Lunny when he appeared at Glasgow Sheriff Court last week. The court was told how, around 5:15pm on October 17th, 2020, police were called to Bartybeath Road in Wellhouse due to an ongoing disturbance. Witnesses had reported Delaney standing in the street holding a kitchen knife. The 24-year-old used it to damage a hire car that was parked in the street, the Deputy Fiscal said. Witnesses refused to give statements to the police, but did provide them with photographs taken of Mr. Delaney standing on the pavement holding a knife in his right hand. Police searched for him, but he was not traced at that point. But then, around 7:20 p.m, a second call was made to police concerning a large-scale disturbance. Delaney, from Newark Hill, was found causing further damage to the car by ripping off both wing mirrors. In the Criminal Justice Social Work report, the court heard Delaney claimed to social workers he was in fact holding a piece of glass. Sheriff Lunny was shown a photograph of Delaney holding the knife. He said that this was a significant weapon in public. I appreciate it was being used for vandalism, but then to tell social work it's a piece of glass lying around. His defence brief said, his parents have been incredibly supportive of him. When I started dealing with him, he was a van driver. Now his condition has got the better of him, not helped by his drinking and taking cocaine. He is an especially nervous and anxious person regarding all that is going on. Sheriff Lunny told Delaney he was sailing close to the wind. Delaney was placed on a community payback order with 24 months supervision and a conduct requirement to engage with addiction services. The sheriff said, with his record and with the behaviour like this, the violence in his record is now 8 years ago. If that had been more recent, he would have been straight to jail now. He's really sailing close to the wind. That is a serious knife. Any knife is serious, but that is a really dangerous thing to be running around the streets with. For a man of your record behaving like this makes me wary that you haven't learned the lessons of jail in the past, so you're almost certainly asking to be sent back to jail. If that knife had been used in any way, shape or form, there would have been no alternative. Delaney was also tagged for 6 months, keeping at home from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. He will have to carry out 210 hours of unpaid work. The sheriff added, this really is a last chance direct alternative to custody. That article was an exclusive by Katrina Stewart.
And that was this week's Glasgow Times news podcast, normally recorded in our studio at the Bishopbriggs Media Centre, currently recorded from our volunteers' homes with the publisher's kind permission. Thanks for listening.